In this little video, I want to introduce Rmarkdown. What's Rmarkdown? The idea is that instead of writing an R script, we are writing a document, like we are writing a manuscript or a report. And while we are writing that in a kind of a simplified format, we are including parts or chunks of R code. So whenever we want to include a figure in our report, instead of, dragging the figure from the disk every time that we are creating a new figure, we are just simply putting in the R code that is used to generate the figure, the table, the p-value that we need to have in the report. And then we compile this R Markdown document using RStudio, using R in principle, and generate a Word document that we can send to someone, an HTML document that we can open in our browser, a presentation which we either in PowerPoint format or HTML, a PDF document, whatever else. So the idea is that I will share my screen now. That we are in fact, bear with me. So the idea is that we have document with a title, abstract. We write something, and then we need to have a figure with a figure caption. And this figure actually is derived, instead of the figure, we have here R code. And when we now compile the figure to HTML, or we compile it to Word, we are getting again a document with the title and the abstract and all the text that we have written. But instead of the R code, what we see here is a figure, a proper figure. And like that, if we need to rerun our R code, we do all the changes in the R Markdown file. We change the text, we change the figure captions, we change the figure itself, and then as the last step, we hit on a button and get the Word document that we can send to others. I will show you now an example of how this looks in practice. It's a paper that we have published last year in Frontiers in Genetics. The paper was prepared completely in R Markdown. So every bit that you see here, including figures, bibliography, tables, inline p-values, everything that could be calculated with R was calculated with R. So I didn't have to edit anything in the Word document that was generated from the R Markdown and sent directly to the journal for review and then for publication. Everything was done here in this document on the level of R Markdown. So this figure looks exactly like the figure that I have created in my R. I had to adapt, of course, the sizes, the resolution, etc. But apart from that, it was directly produced, inserted in the Word document or in the HTML file from the R Markdown. Same goes for the tables. Same goes even for the automatically formatted bibliography. So you actually are getting also bibliography formatting tool with that. And how do you do that? Actually, I will show you how this manuscript looks like in R Markdown. You have this first part that starts with the 3 dashes and ends with the 3 dashes, which is a header. It defines the title, it defines the authors, and a few other options how precisely to compile the document in the target format like Word or HTML. Then we have, as you can see, these hashes here, they do not mean that we have a comment. They mean we have a section that starts here. Then just simple text. It's really this whole file is a simple text. You can open it in any text editor. And we have chunks denoted by the 3 backticks chunks of R code. This is simply what you would write in the R script. So the R script, to generate the figures, to make the calculations for the paper, is split up between those many chunks. Each chunk does some calculation, produces a figure, produces a table. It's split as it is convenient for the authors. Then we have some parts which are here shown in blue between those double stars. You will see them in bold in the resulting paper. So they are converted to the table captions later by the editors. And finally, in some places you will see this tags here, like this one is citing a paper from 2011 by Nieuwenhuis et al. I will not get into how to do the bibliography right now. So let us create a new R Markdown document in RStudio. You go to File, New File, and there are here basically two options. The older one, which I'm going to show now, is R Markdown, but in the meanwhile there is also Quarto, which is a system from RStudio that is basically R Markdown with some bells and whistles that make it visually much nicer. But we'll start with the simpler, old-fashioned R Markdown. R Markdown document creation in RStudio. It asks us for a title, so let us write the title, example document, and then we use the current date here for when rendering the document and the document output format. Independently what you choose here, you will be able to generate any kind of output format, so PDF, HTML, and Word later on. So we create that, and you see we have a new file open. Before we do anything with that, we have to save it. So I'm saving it and calling it example document RMD. This RMD extension indicates that it is a R Markdown document. However, it is a simple text file, as mentioned. You can open it in Notepad++ or whatever other text editor you have on your system, and of course also with RStudio. I save it, and now comes the really important the important part, which is that we need to knit this document. This is this part here. This knitting means converting the document or compiling this document into the target output. So let us knit the document, and we get by default we have selected the HTML, so we get an HTML document. Here is a built-in preview, but we can of course open it in our web browser. And as you can see, you have a figure, you have some code here, you have some output from R. Let us see how it looks like in the R Markdown document. This is the text that we had. This is the code that we had. This is this chunk of R code. So actually this line 19 will be executed, not everything else. And then we have the plot, but the plot has a particular option, echo false. You can select this option by clicking on this little wheel here. And that essentially means that we are not showing the code. We are only showing the output of the code, which is in this case the figure. And so instead of this code plot pressure, we are getting in the output, we are getting the figure. So likewise, if we select the drop-down menu, we can knit it to Word, meaning we can create a Word document out of it. I will do that. I do not have Word installed on my system, but I can open it in LibreOffice, and here it is, open in LibreOffice. And as you can see, it's the same text, but now in a different format. You have the same output. You also have the plot. So the plot was directly inserted, and you can edit the document here. You can modify the document, save it, send it to others. Let us take a look at some other stuff that we can do. We can, for example, define a variable here like p-value. Maybe it's a result of a statistical test, 0.01. And then we can directly use this variable inline in the text. So the p-value was, and here the backticks again, and R to show that it's going to be executed with R, p-value. When I now knit this to HTML, say, because it's faster, you will see now the p-value was 0.01. This is great because that means we don't have to worry to look for all the instances where we included the p-value in the results. When we change the data, everything will automatically change in the document. All the p-values, all the figures, all the tables. So we don't have to worry, well, did I remember to change all the p-values to the newest version? Because obviously the data can change, our processing can change, we can use more data, we can add data. So this will be all updated automatically. This is a great thing. Also, if we have a series of figures that use a particular color palette or symbols, we want to change them, we simply change the relevant part of the code, rerun everything, so recompile the document, and get a new version with all the figures updated. Finally, one more thing, as I mentioned, it has we can also have bibliography, but even more, we can use also mathematical equations, even very complex ones. The language for these mathematical equations is very widely spread and used by many tools. Even Word can use, although it has an equation editor, but it can also use this language. It takes a moment to learn it, but it's really convenient in the long run. Is what mathematicians use to actually format the document. So we can create sigma is the sum, is the square root of fraction between the sum from I equal to 0 to n of overline x minus x and I 2 to the power of 2, and the second part of the fraction is n minus 1, so we are defining here the standard deviation, and this should actually already work. Yes, we have a preview of the formula here shown to us by RStudio. So you can see you can get even very complex formulas. You don't have to worry right now how I wrote it, what that all means, and how the syntax is. The important part for you is to know that you can include any complex equations or mathematical expressions in your document as well. If we now format it to Word, here we come, and open it again in LibreOffice in this case, you will see there is an equation. We can even edit this equation in LibreOffice. You will be also able to edit this equation in Word. So to sum it all up, Rmarkdown is a really great tool for creating your reports, your your manuscripts, the documents which show the result of your calculations. As a matter of fact, it is also a very great tool for ensuring reproducibility, because you can describe at length your reasoning, your methods, and your approach, and at the same time show the code that you are using for achieving the results. So I would strongly advise you to take a look in Rmarkdown and start using it.